I wanted to dive into an interesting topic related to the games that most people consider bad, but that's just some of us that also really like. You know, the type of games that get a ton of hate and maybe don't sell as well, or just seem like just a mess to the critic. For whatever the reason, they just stick with us, and we just can't help but to maybe even defend them. I want to talk about some of those misunderstood gems, why they deserve a second look, and what makes them so special. Now, of course, do let me know in the comments as well what are those sorts of games are for you included. I want to get into some of mine though. First, let's talk about why these games stand out in the first place, and most of the time, of course, they're just not bad all the way through. Instead, they just might have one or two major problems that overshadow everything else. Maybe the story is just not very good, or gameplay is clunky and buggy at launch. Sometimes they just take a big risk that doesn't fully pay off, but those risks are what makes them interesting. A lot of these games have flashes of brilliance, whether it's for the unique idea, a beautiful world, or fun gameplay that gets overlooked. And that's why people, well, like me and maybe you, find ourselves defending some of those games. As an example, let's get into first game, Hellblade. I'm talking about Senua's Sacrifice, just to be specific. This is one of those games that either is loved or dismissed. Depends, of course, who you are, and of course, who you're asking. Critics praise it for tackling mental health in a way that we didn't really see in gaming before, but some people felt that the gameplay was repetitive or too simple. For me, Hellblade, and again guys, I have to clarify this, Hellblade 1, not 2. 2 is just garbage. It's actually, well, Hellblade 1 was like a haunting experience. The atmosphere, the way of the game makes you hear the voices in Senua's head, and the story about her journey through trauma, it all just hit me hard. Yeah, the combat isn't super deep, but I think the game emotionally makes up for it. Not every game has to be flawless or just an unforgettable, and just Hellblade proves that in my opinion. Okay, here's another one, a big example in fact. Days Gone. When it initially launched, critics were not kind. They definitely weren't. They said the game was just too long, had pacing issues, had full of bugs, but over the time more and more players started to fall in love with it. And honestly, I'm one of them, even though I actually liked it initially too. Sure, it's not perfect, but Days Gone had something special. The world feels alive when it's roaming with the zombies, hordes, or, well, freakers, and the survival aspect of it's actually pretty damn intense. You feel the struggle of being on the road, low on supplies, trying to stay alive. Plus the main character, Deacon St. John, well, I think he grows on you. His stories may seem cliche at first, but as the game goes on it gets surprisingly emotional. And now I'll admit, the pacing drags in places, and the game has its shares of issues. But the moments when you're fighting off a huge horde or exploring the wilderness, making it worth it. It's a flawed gem, but a gem nonetheless. Okay, we gotta talk about this, one of the most infamous examples, The Order 1886. When this game came out, it was hyped as a big PlayStation exclusive, and visually, it definitely delivered. This game still looks amazing years and years later. With its cinematic style, steampunk Victorian setting, but the gameplay, yeah, that's where things kind of fell apart. A lot of people didn't like how short the game was or how much it relied on quick time events. And I do get it. There are valid complaints. But I can't help but appreciate what The Order was trying to do. The world building was fantastic and the story had so much potential. The problem was it ended the way too soon and never got to see the potential fully kind of explored and what could have been. Still, I think it's worth checking it out if you're curious about the visuals, stunning game like with a cool atmosphere. It's not a masterpiece, but it's an experience you won't forget. Oh, here's another one on my list. Assassin's Creed Unity. Man, this game had a rough launch. Bugs, glitches, crashes, it was a mess. But once Ubisoft patched it up, it actually turned out to be one of the better Assassin's Creed games in my opinion. The setting is revolutionary Paris, and the level of detail of the city is absolutely insane. From the crowded streets to the grand cathedrals, it's just one of the best looking cities in the series. And let's not forget the co-op missions, those were actually such a fun addition, it's just a shame we haven't seen them in return in later games. A lot of people have come back to Unity years later and kind of realized that it wasn't as bad as everyone thought. It's proof that sometimes a game just needs a little time and, well, a lot of patches to shine once again. So, okay, I have to touch on this game, and it's a big one. It's a huge one, mind you. The Last of Us Part 2. This is one of the most divisive games ever, which is wild because it's also one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time. Critics loved it for its story, gameplay, and technical achievements, but players, well, not everyone was on board. A lot of backlash came down to the story choices, ones that really challenged players emotionally, and I get why some people didn't like it. It's a dark, heavy game that doesn't shy away from uncomfortable moments, but that is also what makes it so powerful. It's not an easy game to play, but it's one that sticks with you a long while after you even finish it. Even if you hated certain parts of the story, you can't deny how much work went into crafting the world and characters. It's a game that takes risks, and while those risks don't land for everyone, I think it's better to aim high than play it safe. So there are plenty of other games that deserve a mention here. Assassin's Creed Syndicate is perhaps another. It didn't do anything revolutionary, but it was fun. Polished game with a unique setting in Victorian London. Of course there's more, and just, the list just goes on. The point is, even games that aren't critically adored can still be fun or meaningful to the right person. Maybe it's the setting, the gameplay, or just the fact that it came along at the right time in your life. So why do these bad games stick with us, right? I put that in quotes in terms of being bad. I think it's because they take risks. They might not get everything right, but they try to do something different. And when they succeed, even just a little, it's enough to make them special. These kinds of games also remind us that no game is perfect. Even the most polished blockbuster, well, unfortunately still has flaws. And even the most broken games can have moments of brilliance. Sometimes it's those imperfections that makes the game memorable. At the end of the day, gaming is a personal experience. What works for one person might not work for the other, and that's totally okay. So next time someone says a game you love is bad, don't be afraid to stand up for it. There's no wrong way to enjoy games, and even the most flawed titles can bring us joy. Thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe. Do let me know what are those sorts of games that you consider to be great, but majority people will say, well, otherwise. See you guys all, like and subscribe, and yeah, have a good one.